Hello, welcome back to Thacker Sunday Hangover with me, James Thacker. I hope you're well. Today we have Oli Warren on. I'm very honoured to have him on today. How are you, sir?
James, I'm really well, thank you. I'm doing all right. How about
Good.
yourself?
Yes, very good, mate. Very good. I've got rugby to look forward to tomorrow, which is just so exciting. We had a good training week this week, so despite the atrocious weather, and yeah, just glad it's Friday and the end of another work week, mate. Long weekend to look forward to,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
beautiful. How's
Have some
how's everything
jouet.
going? Yeah, mate, exactly. Bit of
Saw that
jouet.
offload.
Oh, mate, yeah, I had a few comments in training. They were like, "Oh, you like that, didn't you?" I was like, "Yeah," but yeah, so I got a little bit of
Mate, you've
stick
got to
for.
you've got to market yourself. It's a tough time now.
Listen. I
Self
I
branding.
I play rugby because I enjoy it, and I like to bring out those little moments. So I love having the games recorded now. It's literally so great, like picking things back, and we do a lot of video analysis now, so they encourage us to go and watch the stuff. But then when I find that little juicy clip, I'm like, yes, like especially when it's in the right area of the pitch. Like if I'd done that over in the far corner of the pitch and you can't really see it, then that's not going up. But because that was like right juicy, right next to the pitch, I'm like, yeah, amazing. But mate, how obviously you've at the moment you're going through a little bit of a diet change, and you've been recording that. I listened to your podcast on the Exo Sports one where you're talking about the diet. I mean, that's a really fascinating listen
Yeah,
to, by the way. But how's that all been going? Because I've seen the TikToks you've been putting up about your sugar level. I mean, just for the sake of the listeners, just run through
yeah,
kind of why you're going
mm.
about that and what it is.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, mate, it's been a fascinating journey, but also at the same time quite scary. Um, Basically, Graham Phillips, he is the pharmacist that gave up drugs. He is a friend of the family,
Mm-hmm.
and we decided that we could collaborate together between his business with Pro Longevity and what he does in terms of helping people fix their type 2 diabetes or their hypertension or all these other kind of contemporary diseases through their diet and their lifestyle. And obviously, on the surface, I wouldn't necessarily have any of those conditions. I'm a pretty in shape, healthy eating 26-year-old.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be a really interesting experiment to see for an athletic point of view. I'm not necessarily I'm definitely not a professional athlete, but I do try and hold myself to really kind of be as what's the word I'm looking for?
High performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, went on this 12-day blood glucose monitor. It sat on my belly, and it recorded everything that happened in my blood in terms of glucose spiking for those 12 days. And yeah, it was absolutely fascinating. They are sending me for blood tests because they are a bit concerned with some of the spikes.
Right.
Because some of them they were saying there is absolutely no way someone of your age, your size, your build should be having spikes that large. So yeah, it will all be fine. It's all precautionary, but fascinating, honestly fascinating. Just learning more about one's body is something that I'd recommend to anyone.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listening to the podcast, I think he was saying that the knowledge still, especially in the medical industry, about lifestyle is so
Mm,
unexplored. And I think still some people that are perceivably healthy, so some of these top level
mm,
athletes and some people that would, from the outside look very healthy and, trim, but actually they might have underlying things, bubbling underneath the surface that we don't necessarily know about. And contributors could
yeah,
be things like lifestyle. I think actually some of the strain that athletes put themselves under can actually contribute towards other health defects in the past. And I'm sure there's a link in there between, you have the athletes like Fabrice Muambo who kind of collapses a heart attack in the middle of a football game. But footballers are supposed to be some of the most healthy athletes with the best tickers in the game. So it'd be absolutely fascinating to kind of continue that journey and exploring more about your body and why these things are connected. And I'm sure, I mean, what a great contact to have in a family friend to kind of leverage that knowledge out of, right? He's a bit of an encyclopedia.
Oh yeah, he is, and it's always fascinating when he comes around for brunch or dinner or whatever, and we speak about it all the time. And I think, especially with athletes, as he said on that podcast, athletes do fuel themselves on rocket fuel. It's literally carbs and protein the whole time, essentially, and after a while, that can really take a toll on the body. So, trying to find a happy medium, whether it's being at a certain weight and then being able to perform, it's all individual. And that's one thing that I've kind of learned from this. There's this fascination and kind of obsession nowadays to be like one diet fits all, and it's like, no, that is just not the way. So yeah, I mean, fascinating 2 weeks. I'll do another 2 weeks. I'm moving to a different country. I'm moving to Colombia. And I'll be doing a further 2 weeks there. So yeah, you can track that as well, Thacker.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely will be. I think, diet and nutrition and fitness is something that's obviously of massive interest to me. And I've spoken about it on the podcast before. I've actually been doing some tinkering with my own diet over the last couple of months. I've gone vegetarian for the last 2 months, and I feel like my performance and how I feel in my body has reacted to that change very, very well. Lost a bit of weight, lost the bad weight, and my cardio has gone up significantly. So as much as that, you can kind of make correlations. It may be the fact that I'm just doing more exercise now because rugby's back. However, I would like to do more exploring in that realm because, I think there's definitely correlations there. And also, I do think as well, I'm not sure how well my body reacts to alcohol, which is one that I'm scared to explore, because if it ends up that I'm not allowed a pint on a Saturday night, then I don't know how much I'm going to like that discovery. So, but yeah, I definitely need to do a bit more. Yeah. I think people need to do that in general a bit more and just see what works for you individually, because like you say, everyone's different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I will be releasing another pod with Graham where we kind of go through all the results, and we do talk about one night where I had a binge, and the advice he was giving me, I'm not sure whether he'd give that to necessarily everyone else, but it was, I have had to rethink my drinking habits as well.
It's a killer, especially in this country, and I've spoken about drinking culture in the past on the podcast, and it's in the UK. It's one that I think we hold on to this historic view of pub culture and drinking as many pints and getting bladdered, and seeing that as like a mark of heroism and manliness and just being able to but actually when you think about what that's doing to your body, I think we'd all probably be quite scared, actually.
I would back that up.
Yeah. And you mentioned, obviously, the move to Colombia. So exciting developments, obviously, this week. That's pretty much nailed on now because you got your passport. How are you all geared up to move now? All nearly sorted?
Yeah, got the passport, bought my tickets last night, booked my PCR test. So just need to stay safe and masked up. So hopefully no one gives me Rona in that time.
Yeah.
And then I'm off on the 5th of June, mate.
Exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to it. But new challenge, we'll see. It's not going to be easy, that's for sure. But if you don't try, you never know. So
yeah, exactly. And do you know what? I think this has probably come about at a time. Well, for one, you're escaping some terrible weather, but also it's come at a time where we've been in a year in lockdown, and I think it would be nice for a change of scene for you. And in Colombia, which I've never been, I'd love to go at some point, but from all accounts, it's an absolutely spectacular place, right? Yeah.
Come and do a live pod.
Sounds good, mate. No, I'm keen. So obviously we're here today to talk about your business journey as a young business owner and in kind of your your journey towards where you are now, and I suppose making some comments around business in general at the moment. I was going to we'll probably go on to a little bit of games that I've planned later, but just for a bit of background into you.
Oh God.
Just a bit of background into you, who you are, kind of where you come from. It would be good to just kind of learn, your backstory and where you've come from, really.
Sure. Yeah. I would like to say I'm a born and bred Londoner, but I'm not. Was born in Hong Kong, and then we moved here when I was 6 months, so more like a bred Londoner. And yeah, it's been home ever since, really. Went to Newcastle University, had 3 great years there. Wouldn't change that for the world. And then struggled after graduation, honestly. That was an interesting time. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. My sister very kindly offered that I kind of work with her. And she has her own social media content creation agency for luxury brands. Mm-hmm. So did that for 3 months and then kind of was like, oh, not this isn't really for me. Don't really know what I want to do. And then luckily in 2018, an old tennis coach of mine just gave me a call. I was like, hey, look, I've had this opportunity out here in Germany. Do you want to come here for 6 months? And I was like, oh, God, yes. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the beginning of the journey. I've always been heavily into sport, played tennis very, very seriously from the age of 10 till 18 with the idea to go to college on a scholarship. Never happened. I actually put my mental health first. I wasn't enjoying it. And the Freddie Flintoff, I don't know if you remember the Freddie Flintoff Depression and Sport documentary back in the day.
Yeah, I know the story kind of. I didn't actually watch that documentary, but definitely it's on the list, I think.
Yeah, it was a really good one because he was just talking about depression, his own depression, and he was talking with other athletes, and he spoke to the one that I can remember is a snooker player. Is it? I think Graham Dott.
Okay.
And I watched it, and I was 17 at the time. I watched it, and I was like, "Wow, that's exactly how I feel every single time I step on court." And came clean to my parents. I was like, "I'm not wasting any more of your money. Like, I can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
But it was the best decision I made at that time. It was the right decision. I do not regret anything in terms of what I learned on court. I think, whether it's rugby or tennis or football, everyone who plays that sport turns around and says, this sport gives you the best life lessons to set you up for forever. But, having been in and around loads of different sports, I do think, I personally think that tennis is one of the most intense life learning sports that there is. And so it has really kind of set me up, basically, almost to kind of what I'm doing now, which is quite an incredible thing to say. But yeah, I mean, that's really me in a nutshell.
Why would you say, in terms of the comment around tennis and it giving you the lessons it has, I think tennis is, from the outside point of view, I don't know about tennis a lot. I like to watch it at Wimbledon, but that's about as far as my knowledge goes. But it's a very, individual sport. And I can imagine that it's incredibly taxing on the mind as well as the body. I know that you have to put in ridiculous hours and your cardio has to be peak condition. But I can imagine that you get very much in your own head when it comes to tennis, right?
Yeah, so tennis is it's possibly the most aggravating sport I've ever played. And you don't really get that in team sports at all. Because when you're on court, you have to be the one to make the shots. You also have to be your own coach. You also have to potentially be your own physio. And then you have to have the foresight to be able to let go of everything that's happened. Because if you can't move forward for the next point and it could wreck the rest of the match. So it's kind of this weird situation of not living in the past, living in the present, but also kind of living in the future. And then you've obviously got the tactics involved on top of that, as well as the physicality. Longest matches I've played, 3-hour matches, and you come off court absolutely dead. And you look at those blokes on tour that play for 5 hours, and you're like, how is it possible? And then when you transfer that into kind of team sports, of course you have your roles and responsibilities, but you know that if you screw up, there might be someone that will definitely be able to either pick you up or atone for that error. And the problem, it's not a problem with that. You just, I think for me, I've found when I've played rugby and football, you don't almost acknowledge or revel in those mistakes. But when you're on court and you're the only one, there's no hiding. 100%, you have to take 100% responsibility for your actions.
Yeah.
And that sometimes makes you or really can break you. I mean, I've got a million mental health books about how to be tougher, and I've read some strange authors' words, but it's a journey for sure.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, the difference between, I'd say, the individual side of sport and the team game is that you've got others around you that you can share the workload with, whereas when you're on your own, it's just solely down to you, like you say. I'd say there's still an element of, I think there's different responsibility because when you're in a team sport, you have responsibility to others. So if you make a mistake, then there's 14 other people kind of relying on you to not make those mistakes. So it's a different kind of pressure.
Yeah.
But I suppose because often sports people I know are probably their own harshest critics. So when you're on court on your own and all of this is so pressurized and all your thoughts are internalized, you don't get to just speak them out and hash out ideas with other people. You have to figure out problems at the time on your own, and that I can imagine that it requires immense mental strength. So yeah, that's it's definitely something I think we all need a bit more of. Maybe we could all play a bit more tennis and try to work out some mental resiliency.
So, I mean, when I'm a parent, I would love my kids to play tennis on a recreational level. If they had talent, would I push them into it? No, only if they had the drive. But I think the amazing thing about tennis players, and I can say this because I've been through it myself, the inner monologues of tennis players are just the most hilarious thing ever. When things are going well, you'll speak to yourself in the first person, and when things are going badly, the dialogue will change and you'll speak to yourself in the third person. You'll be like, Ollie, like, what the are you doing? Am I allowed to swear on this? Are we swear? Are we?
Mate, of course you can. Of course.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, honestly, it's like, Ollie, like, what the fuck was that, mate? Like, and you're almost like you're mirroring. You're looking into a mirror, and it's the strangest thing. And I honestly I wanted to write down all of these quotes from my junior days of people saying amazing things in the third person, in the first person. No, the tennis players have very special minds. That's for sure.
No, that's for sure. I tell you, I draw parallels to another individual sport in golf where people talk to themselves in the third person. I've been out with some people who don't have particularly great handicaps, and you know, people just pressurizing themselves way too much. I'm like, literally, we're here for a knockabout. This isn't the Masters.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, Jimmy. And I'm like, mate, it's fine. It's really fine. But like, honestly, when they go on the rant about themselves, like, Jimmy, you're not doing this, and I'm like, this is brilliant. Please, someone record this. I'd love that. Yeah. I reckon there's definitely a YouTube series in that at some point, just like someone hiding in the bushes, just waiting for that little moment. But yeah,
there has to be. I think golf is an interesting one because I would almost hate to be a professional golfer, because if you make a bad shot, there's so much more dead time before you can make it up. Whereas in tennis, you have 20 seconds. Like, if you lose the point, okay, you'll talk to yourself badly, but then you can actually go and atone for it very quickly.
That's true. I'd say that, well, I mean, we're going down the rabbit hole here on
we are
on a different topic, but I'd say in the golf example, you've got a lot of time to say, for instance, you're flustered, you can then step away and actually go, right, calm down and recenter and start remembering all these lessons, especially on the putting green, because that thing is like a mental mind trap. But in tennis, I suppose there's that ability to gather momentum when you kind of recenter, but at the same time, I can imagine you can also lose yourself to momentum if you let yourself kind of keep declining, or if you start hitting the ball out of frustration. I don't know. I think it works both ways, but I definitely appreciate your point. I think I have such immense respect for people in both those sports. Golfers, I think, as much as you say you wouldn't like to be a golfer, I wouldn't mind chasing the sun around the world, just whacking a little ball about for millions and millions of dollars a year. But
honestly, if you gave me the choice, what would be my chosen sporting life? It would be professional golfer. You can play for 45 years at a pro level, as you say, chasing the sun on the greens all the time, and you make probably pretty decent money, even not that high level. So, yeah, I was
watching the PGA last night, and I'm looking at Phil Mickelson, who was playing when I was, growing up watching golf with my dad on the sofa. I still am seeing this bloke, and he's like ridiculously tan skin, like the hair's flying back, shades are on, just absolutely loving it. He'll go and compete, but he doesn't care. Like, he's done it all. He's just going around the world playing golf. No. I'm like, oh, you've actually just made it, haven't you? You've cracked it. You've cracked life. I do love it.
It's the life. That is the life.
Yeah. So in terms of that gap then between, so you finished kind of playing tennis, you decided that's not necessary for you, to where you are now. What was the journey? Yeah. I mean, where did the motivation then to kind of start your own business and start on the journey you're on now?
So it all started with that internship in 2018. I went to Germany for 6 months. Didn't learn the language at all. It was great. And was working for a tech company called PlaySite, and they have automated recording cameras, if you want to call them that, that you can basically play back live. You can be in the stands with your iPad and play it back live and get instant replay and drawing tools and all that kind of stuff. And it was a really good introduction to the sport business market, which is something I'd always wanted to do. And then in 2019, end of January 2019, they brought me in full time. So I then became one of their account managers. I was dealing with a couple of European leagues, clients in the UK. Was really, really fortunate. They taught me a lot. They treated me really well. Sorry. And I was lucky I got to travel a bit. And, a lot of the time people on their first jobs don't really get to do that. So it ticked every box for me. And then March, kind of fast forward to March 2020, and that dreaded phone call comes in going, right, pandemic's hit, mate. Like, really sorry, you're going to have to go. And that was tough. I saw it coming. It wasn't unexpected, and I was self-employed rather than, fully employed. So it was very easy for them to cut me. And it was weird, like, especially with not knowing what was going to happen with the pandemic. We were only meant to lock down for 2 weeks. Yeah. Thanks, Boris. Yeah. So, my parents were kind of saying, like, take some time. I was planning on moving out that year as well. And then obviously that got wrecked. So my parents were like, look, take some time, figure it out. And, on the day I was kind of like being a bit macho, being like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I knew it was coming. Like, I'm used to it. And then 2 days later, I was like, oh my God, what do I do with my life?
Yeah.
And I took 4 days where I binged Joe Exotic and Tiger King. Right. And
what a time. Yeah, that was like peak pandemic times. I remember that when that came out, it was just...
It really was. Yeah. And the funniest thing is that I finished it and I was like, I was more depressed after I finished it than when I started it. And I realized that I was like, right, your life is not as depressing as his. Like, come on, you have skills, get on with it. And funnily enough, I, at that point, downloaded TikTok. And I don't know if you're, for those that are not familiar with the algorithm, when you download it for the first time, it will basically just show you a bunch of different videos. So it can figure out what you like so you can stay on the app longer. And for some reason, the first kind of TikTok environment that I got stuck in was the business side of TikTok. And so I was seeing all the Gary Vee stuff and all these other entrepreneurs. And I saw this one guy and I was like, okay, this is interesting. He's in SMMA, Facebook ads. Well, let's see how that goes. And so I started following his YouTube a bit. And I was like, okay, I think there's a gap in the market here for just better exposure for athletes and their social media profiles, especially in the UK. It's not a big thing. Footballers don't need to have second jobs or businesses that they do when they're not playing. So they're kind of out. They just do it for that, for their own public image. But as you'll know as well, rugby players don't have the luxury of having those the contracts those size. So a lot of them have their own businesses. And I, having followed so many of them, I was like, well, look, there is just a way that you can brand yourself better, and it doesn't feel like you're getting that. And so I started thinking about it. How can I get into that market? What do I do? Facebook ads is not necessarily my forte, and I could learn about it, but there'll be thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that will do it way better than I will. My experience in this is content creation and kind of the strategy, all that kind of stuff. And then got really lucky that my old boss called me in April and was like, hey, look, we have this project going. And I was thinking, could you run the social media for it? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, what's this project? And it was the first professional tennis exhibition back since the global lockdown. It was called Exo Tennis, and preferably he would have obviously wanted me to be there on the ground and run it properly.
Sure.
But I did it remotely. I did it from London, and then that started in May, and May was the most bonkers month for me I've had probably ever, because I was doing the events in Germany, and then we started events in Atlanta. So I was working from 7 in the morning until potentially 3 in the evening. 7 in the morning and then like 3 a.m.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I was done after May, and we took a month off, and we started again in July, but we didn't do the American events. We just did the German events, and then after that, Exo Sports was born, where the business is sport branding and marketing for athletes, coaches, sports companies, anything. We can offer Facebook ads, we can offer the content, we can offer the strategy, anything. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster. It's been a slog, but it has been one of the most interesting and priceless experiences I've ever had.
That's awesome. No, it's really interesting to hear, and it's interesting how I think in that time, and especially over the last year, we've all undergone unfortuitous circumstances and had to roll with the punches to a certain extent. I think it's always important to stay adaptable, and then when the opportunity arises, and these things may be small, sometimes they're big opportunities that come by in life, but you got to be ready really for when they do come. And also not shy away from opportunities, like be ready for it. Say yes more often than you say no, because you never know where these things might lead. So you saying yes and grabbing that opportunity with both hands with the Tennis Expo has then led to great things for you. So I suppose the learning there is to always kind of jump into things feet first, because realistically, and this is something that I'm banging on about quite a lot at the minute, but making the most of our time while we've got it, because honestly, time can get taken away so quickly. So literally grab every opportunity you get with both hands, I think is, it's definitely something I've taken out of that little journey you took us on there.
Yeah. It's been a really strange one. I've been very lucky, and that's not beyond me. I know that a lot of people haven't had that opportunity, especially during this year. But with as much luck as I may have had, I've had other challenges that have brought it back down. So it has been a roller coaster, and it has been an extremely steep learning curve. One that a lot of people do tend to struggle to understand it really, because it's just so removed from what the norm is. Find a job, do your 9 to 5, live for the weekend kind of thing. So it has been a priceless learning experience.
No, that's good to hear, man. So I think you mentioned it there, where your daily routine or your week looks a lot different to others, and I think I'll come back to
Yeah.
what your kind of culture looks like and what you're kind of trying to breed with this new environment that you're trying to move into, and the new company.
Mm.
But I mean, over the last 12 months, with the state that the world of sport's been in, I'm sure that there's been two things that have happened. One, it's been an incredibly difficult market to actually gain any business from, because there's not been a lot of money about. There's not been fans coming through the door. There's not been as much activity. Obviously we've had the football season
Mm.
this year, but again, there's not an abundance of
Yeah.
money floating about. And then, but also you've got, I think from the athlete's point of view, they'll always be looking, and athletes now. You've got the Saracens players with, Brad Barrett's got his Tiki Tonga coffee, and you have
Yeah.
in all realms. I mean, before James Haskell stopped playing rugby, he had his, fingers in many pies and things like that. And although they are at the elite level, I know that so many athletes now will always be looking for a bit of a side hustle, a way to brand themselves. So whilst all this has been going on, they're probably thinking, well, I actually need to keep myself ticking over, want to, be expanding out to different reaches and different audiences. So I guess there's been it's, as much as it's been difficult in some aspects, I suppose it's posed different kinds of opportunities in
Mm.
others, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for any young business to try and make money within the first year is extremely difficult, depending on what you're offering. And I that wasn't alien to me. My sister has her own business. I have other friends of the family that have their own business, and having that ability to talk to other people that have gone through it, it was again priceless. And so the mindset from the off was, okay, let's try and find clients, but you need to learn. And obviously, being in lockdown for the majority of the year, what else is there to do if you can't make money? Okay, you need leverage. So what's your leverage? Is it going to be the way that you make the content, or is it going to be the way that you communicate with clients? Is it going to be, all of these different things? So it is, there are ways to really, whether you're progressing yourself personally, you're still progressing the business.
Mm-hmm.
If you are the face of the company, you don't need to know everything, because you're never going to. But you need to know something potentially different from a completely different industry, a completely different sphere, that you can then apply to your own, that can then impress someone else. So I mean, for me, I've obviously done a lot of reading and about sport and about the industry and what's going on, but I look to the arts. I look to different parts of the world, because just because something works there doesn't mean it can't work here. And let's take Lil Nas, for example. His music slays. His music's great.
Yeah.
But the way that he markets his music is such a brilliant example for personal branding. His latest song, what's it called? Call me by your name, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Pole dancing in knee-high leather boots. Well, he's comfortable doing it, but also he knows that he's going to get a reaction. Mm-hmm. That's genius.
I saw the fallout of that, actually. It was because he's come out, obviously, I think he came out as gay, I want to say a year ago or 2 years ago. And obviously he's a black guy in America, homosexual black guy in America, extremely marginalised community out there. And then just to stir up even more emotion in probably where we'd associate that kind of, with the discrimination against that subsection of the community, which will probably be, and this is stereotyping a little bit, but like the Deep South and with the more conservative bits of America. He also then goes at their religion as well by claiming that he's the devil and he's in. I was just like, this guy's got a death wish. I was like, please just look after yourself. But at the same time, look how it works, because it got everyone talking about it.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at also Old Town Road, I mean, he says that he spent something like 16 plus hours a day making memes about the song and uploading it to Reddit so that it would trend. That is, first of all, genius. Second of all, one of the best work ethics to your craft I've seen in a long time. I'm not saying that footballers should be going around pole dancing in knee-high boots, but there are ways that athletes need to step up their game in terms of their branding. For some reason, the European athletes have no idea how to do it personally. They need to look to the States.
Is that because they're from a different culture? That I think because I think Lil Nas is still really young, so he's also grown with that technology all throughout his life, most likely. So he's very accustomed to it. He really knows how things work.
Yeah,
He probably knows what's going to get a reaction. If you spend a lot of your time on your phone, like we all do these days, especially in our generation, you'll probably get a good sense of like what's going to work, and you can try things out and all that kind of thing. There will be, especially in the sporting realm, where realistically you don't have that much time, and also people from different cultures will naturally spend less time plugged into social media and more time with family or more time and it might not get the same reaction in different cultures. So do you think it's probably a bit of an educational curve that the sports sphere's got to go on to kind of reach the same as the media space?
Yeah, maybe. I think the American system has always lended itself better to marketing because it's been professional for longer. And the fact that from the age of, like 5 years old, the system is basically rearing kids to one day end up pro if they can. You know, you could be a high schooler playing on TV. I mean, I couldn't imagine that myself. That'd be weird pressure, you know. And so these guys know about how to stand out, whether it's through their philanthropy or their fashion or their own business, or that, you know, they all have. And plus, the majority of them have also gone through college. You know, they know about how to exploit their brand, because at college also you can't do that. You cannot make any money off it. So the only thing that you can do is build a following. But as soon as you make it pro, once you're out, you can make money off your name and your images. And that's not something that we have here. I don't know. I was going to say, you know, obviously footballers get a ton of abuse. And so that probably does keep them away from wanting to be online personalities. And I don't really know what the situation is in the States with abuse and the kind of the levels that they get there. But it doesn't seem to stop them. They still kind of get on with it and do their own thing and really push themselves to get a new deal or find a new industry and basically express themselves.
Yeah, do you think that's probably because it's more part of the culture, though, the American culture, where you can be whatever you want to be, the American dream, all that kind of stuff, and that kind of entrepreneurialism is encouraged. And the business, I mean, sport is very much seen as the business. So then why should the athlete also not operate as a business? Whereas in this country, as we've seen and as we've talked about very recently, we don't really like when sport and business collide and unsuccessfully, especially in this country. But in the game of football and others, and so it sparks a negative reaction when people are seen to be selling out or they try and make themselves a business or trying to sell too much, because I think that the sports in the rest of the world other than America are perceived in a very different way. I think there's a vastly different culture around it.
Yeah. It's a really, really interesting one. I can't quite put my finger on it, because I think potentially, you know, as we have discussed in on previous weeks, like especially some of the fans are a bit deluded as to what this industry is. You know, money does make the world go round, and I'm also of a strong opinion that, especially for football, they are missing a trick. Clubs should be doing, in my opinion, what rugby clubs do, which is offer up their network and say, if you want to build a business, we're going to help you. If you want this contact, we'll set up meetings. If you want to do this type of marketing, we know this guy. Because if you, you know, we've spoken about club loyalty as well a lot. If you have clubs that are saying, right, we're not going to give you 300 grand a week. We'll give you 200 grand a week for your new contract, but we're gonna incentivize you because we know that you want to do this business, and we're gonna help you with it. Because I feel like there's a way that you can just blood these players into more deeper roots into these clubs. You know, Gigi Wijnaldum, for example. Why do you want to leave to go to Barcelona now? And if Liverpool turn around and go, oh well, Gigi, you know, you can work with LeBron James on a new fashion line because he wants to build relations in Liverpool and the UK. Why would you leave? Honestly, you know, there's so many things that I'm like, you're missing a trick here.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how it develops over time. I mean, I was going to ask you who. I think there's one obvious athlete who far surpasses anyone from their personal branding, which I'm sure you can read my mind. But in terms of who you have identified as like the people to have done it best, and I guess maybe the reasons why in the past, who would you kind of say? I think number one's fairly obvious.
Yeah, number one is very obvious. I've spoken about him a lot on my TikTok. From a Premier League and British perspective, Hector Bellerin is like, if there are any young academy players out there that want to try and not just be a footballer, follow Hector, follow him. But away from that, you know, there are other people that have really surprised me. Well, James Haskell's not a surprise. I think, again, if you're a rugby player or even a footballer, follow what he does. I mean, the man's a chameleon. He was doing it when he was playing. Like, honestly, he could do anything. But he's just got that drive, so that's cool. Ben Foster really has shocked me. And you know what? I said this to you on the phone. I'm shocked that no one has done this before. I'm absolutely shocked. And the fact that he is, you know, in the twilight of his career, doing this sorry, I don't want to be ageist, but at his age is fascinating. It really is. Because if you turned to me and said, okay, someone's going to do, you know, daily vlogs on their GoPro, I'd be like, he's definitely 18 years old. Yeah. He's definitely a Gen Z. Like, definitely. But no, we have an almost 40-year-old goalkeeper doing this and absolutely killing the game. It is only a matter of time before someone else jumps in and goes, right, Ben, hold your beer. Like, it's my time now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it might be the case where he's waited to a point where there's enough safety, and also he's at the back end of his career where he feel comfortable enough to do that. Whereas an 18-year-old kid's just starting out, I think the level he's setting himself up to fail there is so high. I think that would ward anyone off doing that. And so I think that's probably the only reason why we've seen something like that in this country yet. I think as well, the reason why that's been so successful is that he's done it himself rather than it being run by a Sky Sports, a BT Sport, because then it doesn't have the same personal feel. And also he's identified a platform that's right for it as well in YouTube, because it's a very more consumable, short content. People don't watch as much TV now. You can watch YouTube wherever you go. So I think he's done really well. And I think it's going to be a bit trailblazing, albeit probably quite late compared to, like you say, some of the Americans will probably be doing this stuff for ages already. But it'd be interesting to see where it goes from here. I think we discussed, you know, the goalkeeping situation is quite unique because there's so much more stuff that you can film because you stay in one position. Whereas, you know, you're not going to have people running around in Premier League football games with GoPros on their chest, for instance. But yeah, it will definitely be interesting to see where it goes.
Give it time.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think it wouldn't surprise me if once he retires, you see him presenting on TV, but not just for football. I think, you know, you could see him on, I would not the one show, but, you know, like something of that kind of equivalent. Like he's building himself a TV personality, or even, you know, on Joe on their content channels as well. So, like, you know, I think he's really setting himself up for retirement. Like, he will be flooded with stuff to do, which is really great. I think Actually, Memphis Depay's done some interesting things, coming out with rap songs. Another tennis player, Denis Shapovalov, also has brought out some rap songs. Not that they're any good, but the point is, there are people trying new things out there, it is great. You're just going to have to be patient and wait until it happens. On a club perspective, Arsenal have been moving and shaking this season, and I know it's not on the pitch, which is where I'd love it to be, but I think they're being extremely clever with the way that they've positioned themselves with the 424 merchandise. They definitely are trying to tap into a completely different market and a completely different use of their badge, which is really interesting. I compared it to the PSG and Air Jordan thing. And the main difference here is that the PSG Air Jordan, that is really only for on the pitch. Everything else kind of stems from it. Whatever you see happen on the pitch with the shirts, everything else comes out of that. Whereas this was like, we're not even going to acknowledge the football shirt. This is about wearable clothing you can have any day. And that was what was so interesting.
Yeah, but they've now kind of blurred the lines in that, haven't they? Because the PSG kit for next year has got the Air Jordan logo on it, which for me, it's fascinating in itself, because what is it? It's a bloke playing basketball on a football shirt. So it's amazing how, like you say, that these football brands are going out and becoming more than just a football club. And I suppose then going forward, where do you see the biggest areas for growth, and what do you see is the kind of future of business? In terms of the things that you're most looking forward to see, and maybe things that you're getting involved in at these early stages.
That's an open-ended question, Thacker. Yeah. We could go a number of different ways here.
Talk about, brother.
I think it really depends on the sport. I think we're seeing a lot of footballers on Twitch, which is great. It's a cool way for them to interact with their fans, and whether it's Aguero or James Rodriguez or anyone else, that's a great thing. But I think one major trend that we'll be seeing in football is how I think we'll be seeing more of footballers becoming YouTubers. And not just Ben Foster.
Yeah, is that a way to just bring them closer to the... I mean, it sounds pretty obvious, but it's like bringing them in, bringing a better fan engagement. And I suppose in doing that, I suppose the clubs have got to monitor that quite closely as well, though, because obviously if they're representing the club, then everything they do essentially can get brought back to the club. So it'll be interesting to see how they've got their say on it, what they can and what they can't do, what parameters the clubs will put on their activity, whether they can at all, whether the players will go, "No, stuff you, I'm doing this because it benefits me." It'd be interesting to see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, the Ben Foster model it's groundbreaking, because not just the club have allowed him to do it, but Sky and the EFL have got behind him and said, right, if you want footage from matches to put in your vlogs, like, here it is. And that's really unique. Will that happen with other players that want to do it? Depends on who they are, but I think it's going to get to a point where these, as we see sometimes, these players get too big for their own clubs, and so they kind of make decisions for themselves. And when careers are short, sometimes that pain of leaving a club because they don't want to allow you to be a YouTuber is worth leaving for. So I think we will see it more. It's someone who does impress me as well. Alfonso Davis.
He's done well. I know he's been quite active on the TikTok game, especially. But
he's hilarious.
He's done well.
He's hilarious, and I think he's also unique because of his profile and his girlfriend as well. They do it together, and they have a YouTube channel. I don't know whether it's the channels together or it's one of theirs, but I think we're going to see way more of that. Way more of that. I think within rugby, I don't see at the moment. I'm a bit removed from it, but I don't see that much in terms of like drastic change. I think it will just continue to go the way that it is. I think there will be an increased encouragement for young academy players to start thinking about their businesses and futures. I know that COVID has wrecked a lot of people's contracts. So I think there will be a much bigger emphasis on that. How clubs get around that without kind of committing offences like Saracens and other clubs have is going to be a big ask. But yeah, I think the trends will generally continue with rugby. Tennis is really where there is a lot of work to do, in my opinion. I love the sport, and it is, as I've said, it's an incredible sport. However, some of the marketing is absolute rubbish.
It's quite niche as a sport because it's not in the limelight. I think it only attracts a subsection of the community still, the sporting community. I think for me it's more around how the tournament marketing is so important, because the way that Wimbledon's branded itself, it's, for me, when I think about Wimbledon, I think about like the colours, the gold, like the greens, like the history of the tournament, and also the fact that like, everyone has to play in white, and it's all got this history and mystic around it. It's fantastic, and I think the competition as a brand, I think, is amazing. But that for me is like where my tennis engagement goes, and then I'm like, right, well, I don't know like where they're going next and when things are on. It's also where is it on TV as well? Like, is it Eurosport? Is that
inaccessible?
Yeah, I mean that for me is a massive problem. And it doesn't mean like I don't like tennis, but I just never see it.
Yeah, but look, the problems within tennis are huge right now. One of them is the fact that the average age of the tennis audience is 62.
Bloody hell!
Yeah, like that's old in terms of viewership. It's not, obviously you can still do a lot when you're 62. My parents are 62, and they're still going well. But
you've got a lot more time then, don't you? You've got a lot more time to flick through the channels.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just like, where are the kids at? Oh, they don't care because they're just going to watch the 5-minute highlights. So tennis is like, in terms of viewership, it's in a really interesting and precarious position. But also, as much as I love the big three, and as much as they've been amazing to build tennis as a sport, they're not dynamic. The most dynamic and interesting person on tour is Nick Kyrgios. And I'm not saying I can condone his behavior at times, because I can't. But from a purely exposure viewpoint, he is money in your pocket. And I sat down once with my business partner and was like, what do you think of this idea? Oh yeah, I like it. What do you think of this idea? Yeah, I like it. Has that been done before? Nope. But I'm sure it has been done before. Yeah, it's been done in another sport, but it hasn't been done in tennis. And it's like, there's so many, I can't really go into it because there's so many things that I actually really, really want to do, and I'm going to try and execute them. But there's so many things that I look at, whether it's in basketball or NFL or football, and I'm like, if you just applied this to tennis, it would explode. And that is such a unique position to be in, where you go, this is such a developed sport where, the top end of players get paid a hell of a lot of money. It is possibly the most equal sport amongst men and women, yet no one really watches it or cares. And that is a real shame.
Definitely. So I'd say, would you say then going forward that is the sport that you're probably most involved with from a business and personal point of view, with the biggest area for growth, and that's something that you're going to be working on, explicitly to try and change, I guess?
Look, it definitely has the biggest chance for growth. I'm working on it, and I really want to materialize some of these ideas, because I think, oh my God, it would I think there's some of these ideas that would really gain a hell of a lot of respect from other people outside of tennis, but it would ruffle a lot of feathers within the game. And, that is something I'm all for. It's so wooden right now. But it's exciting as well. Like, I mean, look, there are still good things going on in the sport. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. But I think I just see the opportunity, basically. But that's part of my job, to try and exploit that and make sure that someone's winning out of that. So yeah, mate, let's see. I'm setting myself a year-long time frame for it, but let's see how everything goes with code. And
well, mate, yeah, that is extremely exciting. I think I'm all for feather rustling.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely keen for that, and maybe next year we can maybe check back in if you're not too busy in Colombia to have a little catch up to see how it's all going. Just rewinding it from a business point of view, then obviously businesses have undergone such a drastic change, not only in how they've been forced to operate, but over the last 5 years, there's been a shift in terms of what new employees coming into the market are looking for out of their working environments. And then that's forced a little bit of change in terms of what the work week looks like, how we're operating, more people operating from home and going forward. So in terms of your culture of, EXO and what you're looking to breed going forward, what are kind of like the main core values? And you obviously mentioned that your work week looks a bit different to a lot of what the stereotypical work week looks like. So, I mean, what does it look like for you?
Yeah. You want me to run through my day, do you?
Mate, go for it. We'll pick it apart.
Well, look, critique it for me. Look, it's I think it's one of those things you just have to be ready and on your feet at any time, really. I work across time zones, which is fun and challenging all at the same time. Sometimes I wake up to messages at 6 a.m. and it's like, oh, I got to start now. But it is fascinating. I think the key thing for me with what I do, because at the moment, I mean, in terms of creating the content and everything, I do it virtually all myself in terms of strategy and editing. I do have great videographers on standby that I completely trust, and they're incredible at what they do. But for me, it's about having almost like coping mechanisms throughout the day, that if I am feeling a bit stressed or if I need a breather, I can pick one of 6 things that I can just go to and go, right, here's 10 minutes, just chill. I don't, obviously, look, I try and do 9 to 5, but sometimes I can't do the 9 to 5. So it's just about being flexible. And at the same time, like, motivation can hit you at different times. You can wake up one day and go, I'm just not having any of this right now. It's more productive for me to go and read for an hour. So go and read for an hour. That's fine. Like, who cares? That's still progress. But it's all about refining all of that. I meditate a lot. I'm quite a musical person as well. So I'll play guitar. I'll sing as well. I've got into journaling as well. I found that really helpful for just because look, you can sit down with someone and chat with them about what's going on in your life, whether it's good or bad, but you can't really track that. And I think, again, for someone who's tracked progress throughout their life in one way or another, journaling is a very useful tool to kind of look back and go, okay, that's what happened that day. That's why you felt bad.
I'm completely with you. I actually started doing that recently. So I started doing every single day, sitting down, and actually, so the company that I work for, we have a dedicated time for just after work finishes, actually from 5 till 5:30. It's called reflection time, which can be viewed as maybe a little bit of a corporate gimmick, but when you actually put purpose to it, and that's obviously on the individual to go and put purpose to it, can be incredibly impactful. So one thing that I wanted to do was sit down and think about one lesson or something that I've reflected on that day, and then something that I'm going to do better tomorrow. So it means you're constantly
Yeah.
reflecting on what's been, and then growing and evolving as a person day on day. And I think it creates so much more. And that's why I think
Yeah.
when you say journaling is so important, it creates so much more self-awareness. And it also means that you're never sitting still and just resting on your laurels and happy with how you are today, because it just all that matters is how I'm going to get better next day. Because again, we've got to make the most of our time, right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And as a tennis player, I got told, as a 14-year-old tennis player, I got told journal, and I was, why the fuck would I do that?
Yeah.
Why the fuck? Like,
Because
honestly.
you associate
And
it
now I
with a
look back on it.
diary, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, especially when you're young, you're like, oh, diaries are for girls. Like, why would I want to
Yeah.
do that? Like, that would actually involve showing some emotion or like thought
Yeah.
process. Where I just want to be out kicking a football about. But actually, when you deep it, and especially, I think it comes with a little bit of maturity for boys. It's just,
Yeah, 100%. But I think it's also one of those journeys that you have to get there on your own. You can't be forced into doing that, because otherwise the motivation will just drop. You have to just do it yourself. I spoke to a mental health professional about this, and they said that on top of the journaling, what you could also do is one every other day or whenever you feel like it, instead of journaling, draw your day. And I'm a horrible artist. And I was like, why would you do that though? Like, surely you can just write it down. Like, it'd be simpler. I can't draw, why? And they said, because when you draw, you use a different part of your brain. And that will allow you to process the day and the emotion and what you're going through in a much deeper way that actually allows you to release it better. And it is really interesting because, you and I have had brief chats about mental health and why it's potentially so bad in this country for men, especially. And, for me, someone that is very in touch with their emotions, thanks to the Latin side of the family, hearing that, I was like, whoa, wow, that's interesting. And I've tried it, and yeah, it's pretty powerful, because you just stop and you're like, I'm crap at this, but wow, I'm feeling something. And yeah, that's been a really interesting learning curve. We'll get onto this, because you asked me some questions, you sent me some questions before, but like owning a business and going through this is one of the biggest personal growth journeys you will ever go on. And it's rapid. And so having that ability to reflect in writing and reflect in pictures, and reflect verbally is something that people need to find a balance with, and they need to do.
I definitely agree. I think as well, I think that way of thinking is extremely progressive. It's a departure from the working environment that we've seen before. I think and I think now people in general, especially working professionals, are becoming a lot more self-aware and looking to do that analytics and self-reflection.
Yeah.
However, it's not always being encouraged as much as it maybe should be. But there's also a lot of practices widely in business, and especially in the Fortune 500 companies and some of the most successful kind of blue chip companies in the world. I mean, what kind of things do you see, just like broadly speaking, because I've got my own views on this, but what do you see as some of those practices that you think that they don't need to be, a business doesn't need to be that, or they don't need to be doing this, or, what kind of new practices do you see and you're thinking like there's actually massive room for kind of businesses to incorporate that?
Oof. Another big question, Thacker. I think giving employees the option as to when they can take time off, and I don't mean just holiday. I think, like, at the moment we don't employ anyone other than myself and my business partner. but I've always had ideas in mind as to when, if I had to bring someone in, what I would do in terms of to create a culture where they felt cared for and supported. Because at the end of the day, if you can't let go of responsibility as a business owner and you have to control everything, the business will never be bigger than you. So you have to create an environment where you can have people that can be proactive off their own back. And then if there is a mistake, then you correct it together. You know, I think if anyone what really wants to learn about freedom with their business and their work, read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Right. It might not, I mean, I read the whole thing, and half of it was definitely applicable to what I was going through and what I need to do. And the other half wasn't, because that wasn't really my industry. But the nuggets of goals that he has in there, certain ideas, it's like, yes, more people could be doing this. I won't give it away because honestly, people should read it. But I think there should be definitely the choice to have maybe one long weekend off every quarter. You know,
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think so. There's a couple of things. I mean, giving more trust to your employees, I think, is huge. That's one thing that I really appreciate when I do see that, and I feel that trust to the. It doesn't matter how you go and do your job. Whatever metrics you need to work to, just go and do it, and find out what works for you. And because I'm going to give you that trust, and because I get that trust, it makes me perform better, because I'm like, right, well, I can now go and do this my way and not necessarily in a one-size-fits-all manner. And as a salesperson, you do, you work to kind of bring the revenue in, and it doesn't actually matter how that comes in. Sometimes you'll get extremely fortuitous. Sometimes you have to graft extremely hard. Some days you'll work 10, 12 hours. Some days you work 2 and play golf for the rest of the day with a client. It works like that. But this is in so many different occupations. I think we now need to get away from, you need to be sat at your desk 9 to 5 just so I know that you're getting the hours in. I've been to businesses where they'll log call hours, they'll log the times they come in and out of the office. I think I've seen companies desperate to get back into the office because they don't know what their employees are doing while they're sat at home. And I'm like, well, why do you employ them then? Because if you don't trust them to be doing a job from home, then why are they employed? Like, you need to be able to trust them in all facets, because let's be honest, the work, people aren't going to solely work in the office anymore. There is going to be, even if you're not working from home all the time, there is going to be this hybrid work week now. So to a degree, people are going to be working from home at some point. So if you don't trust your employees then to go and do a job, then it's never going to work, because first of all, it will be a major distraction for any kind of level of management. And also senior leadership will be so kind of focused on micromanaging everything, and then that will distract from performance. And also it's extremely demotivational when you don't feel that trust from seniors and your bosses. So I definitely think there needs to be more adaptability. I think within reason there needs to be more onus on the individual to schedule their own work week, to take the time when they need it. I think there's been over the last year, we've been really had our eyes open to different mental health issues, different kind of issues entirely that we never thought were possible, out of a pandemic, and I think it'd be a really big learning curve for when companies do start coming back full time. What the actual work week needs to look like for the goodness of wellness and well-being of the employees, but also how best to really drive the drive performance and drive profits.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. The companies they only kind of focus on the output of the whole company, and I think if they focus more on caring for their employees and their own performance, it should be a knock-on effect. If you have a workforce that is happy and really is motivated and wants to work and can perform when needed, you'll get better results all round, you know. But yeah, I mean, I haven't had too much exposure around that, around big companies, especially. I've always worked from home. I've only had the exposure of when, you know, I go on site to meet clients and be in clubs. But it is fascinating. It is fascinating, that kind of work culture. I also think that there's potentially a lack of encouraging people to have hobbies away from drinking.
Yeah, oh mate, that is huge, and especially in sales culture as well, because that seems to be everyone's go-to. Again, in the UK, it's just like, you know, everyone just flocks to the pub that thirsty Thursdays and all that bollocks. Well, I've never actually been able to partake in that much, because every Thursday I've got training, which to be honest is probably a good thing, because it's definitely saved my liver a little bit. But yeah, I think it's about doing something different. And actually, again, one good thing that my company's done is encourage, whilst we've been at home, and they first introduced it when we were during the winter. They gave us 12 till 1 to go out and do anything, like just away from our desks. That was because the daylight was obviously short. So in the evening, where people would be doing a lot of runs when we were in the first lockdown, it was no longer applicable. So they encouraged us to go out on walks, do something, as much as it was like cold. And some people say, "Oh, well, yeah, that's your lunch hour," but giving you that flexibility to go out and do something, encourage you to take, you know, in competitions like photography competitions and doing challenges on Strava altogether, encourages people to get active. It encourages that kind of behaviour, and I think then that breeds a different kind of culture where you're doing a lot of things that are actually going to benefit your mental health and your well-being, which will then in turn feed back into your productivity and performance at work, rather than going and do something like letting off a load of steam and blowing the doors off on a Thursday night, which will then, I mean, realistically, apart from a short run release of endorphins and it's so fantastic to get out and about and be drinking, and we all know how fun that is in the short term, but long term, there aren't many benefits. And I can tell you from first hand experience, waking up with a hangover trying to work is no fun. And you ain't getting a lot done that day on the Friday, I'll tell you that for free.
Nothing. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think so. One thing that has I've kind of discovered a bit by accident in the last 2 months or so, and I only had this realization maybe a couple of days ago. I was like, I'm not watching Netflix anymore. And I was like, why is that? And I've replaced it, as you know, as I said before, like with good habits in terms of, okay, I'm not watching Netflix in the morning, but you know, I'll meditate for like 5-10 minutes, then I'll tidy my room and make sure that my space is set for the day. I'll go downstairs, I'll go for a walk before I've even had breakfast, then have breakfast. Right, you ready to start the day? If I get bored, I am trying so hard not to get on my phone and hit up Instagram and hit up TikTok, but it's again, it's hard obviously when you work in that industry. It's like,
of course, yeah.
But one thing I have done to kind of mitigate that has been just to unfollow people that either take up too much space or are posting warped realities of what life is, this perfect world, and it's like, no, don't need that. And like, I go on Instagram now and I'm like, refresh it? Like, why is there nothing coming up? I'm like, yeah, of course, because the people I'm following are normal people. They don't just post for the sake of posting. If anything, I'm the one that's doing that now. And then I'm replacing the dead time in the day by reading, by being creative, you know, as we've discussed. And I had this realization the other day. I was like, okay, I still watch Netflix. I still watch it for lunch. You know, I watched maybe 2 episodes of The US Office. Great, cool. It's not like it's out of my life, but it's been completely weaned down to the point that I'm like, I have so much more time to do other things that on top of it make my work more productive. And that has been a revelation.
Do you think that's about being more honest and asking yourself the hard question? Because what I've been doing recently is doing a lot of reading around, you know, how you can get the best out of yourself, high performance, all that kind of stuff. And often people will take the short-termist option, the path of least resistance, and not ask themselves the hard questions. And I think a lot of people will be aware of the amount of time that they spend on their screen, on their phones, or aware of the amount of Netflix episodes that they're watching, but they'll never be asking themselves the question is like, could I be spending my time more productively here? Do I need to be spending that much time? Am I consuming content that's good for me? And like you say, you unfollowed loads of people who just were no good for you. And I actually did that recently where I like culled 200, 300 people that I was following. I was like, I basically asked myself the question, I was scrolling through, do I care? No. And I just like, you know, when you actually whittle it down and you're like, I only want to be consuming things that are good for me, because I think now, I can't remember who made the parallel, but it was like putting the amount of content you're consuming via phone or anywhere is just as important as it is to hydrate yourself or the food that you're consuming, because just as much as that food and the water is having an effect on you physically, every single thing you consume, your content, the people you hang around with, we are products of our environment. So anything that you're putting into your system is then going to have an effect on you, whether that be mentally or physically or otherwise. So I think do you think it's just about people developing those habits over a long period of time, like the ones that are actually going to benefit them long run, but also just asking yourself the harder questions, I guess?
I think it's a bit of both. I think also, with our generation, we haven't necessarily grown up with it, but we got it introduced into our lives probably just about the right time to keep us fixated onto it. Yeah. Well, I mean, right time for them, wrong time for us. And I think also what a lot of people suffer with is they're not necessarily motivated by certain things in their lives, whether it's their job or their relationship or their friendships or whatever. And it is this escapism, it's no surprise that a lot of these travel bloggers are so popular because they do offer this different life that people can't really see themselves doing because it's too big a risk to drop everything and try and do that. So I think it is. I wonder if it's also, again, just the fact that people can't see rapid growth within their career. So then they just kind of go, well, it'll happen when it happens. And then they just kind of lose that discipline and motivation,
Yeah, I think so many people are fixated on outcomes and consequences rather than the process of getting there. And that's one thing that I've been trying to do recently is just, so first of all, taking every opportunity as it comes. So even if I do feel like I'm stretched, take that new stretch project at work because it's going to benefit you in the long run. It's going to open doors elsewhere. Take that free paid job, that's going to maybe give you some exposure in somewhere that you'd never even thought about before, and not just like resting your laurels or settling for enough. I think that was, by the way, a big problem that I had. I think, especially on my placement year when I was 21 and around the time of uni, it was like just settling for enough. Not pushing myself too much. Like I'm still comfortable, and I think, as a lot of people know, or at least people who have done the research into it, we do the most growing when we're outside our comfort zone. So when you are stretched, when you are just testing your limits, you're going to have tired days. You're going to have days where you're asking yourself tough questions. You're going to have days where you're feeling a bit down, and you're going to have to work on your things like your mental health and your mental resiliency and your physical health, and actually make some sacrifices. So instead of going out to the pub, I'm actually just going to sleep, or getting those things in that, realistically, is it going to be beneficial to you in the long run? Make those tough decisions. And I think as a generation, we are probably not good enough at doing those. And I know for sure that I've got room to grow in that department. But I think hopefully going forward, we can start breeding the culture of let's do the things that are going to maximize genuine utility of life, rather than those things that are just so quick and get the hit of dopamine, get the short-term enjoyment and relief kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. I can't disagree with what you said there, mate.
There you go. No. Before we move on to, I think there's a few questions I want to ask you that get a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it won't keep you too long, sir, because I know your time is very valuable. But I wanted to play a bit of we'll play a bit of a quick fire game, and it's going to be around kind of a topic that we just talked about in terms of company culture and things like little trends that are kind of started to appear, and whether you would keep or bin. So I'll roll them out, and then you can either say keep or bin. So the first one,
this will be fun.
3 to 4 day work weeks.
Oh, I think keep them.
Keep them. Okay. Well, we can go back into these after you say keep or bin. We'll go back into them. Sleep pods.
Oh, I'm so 50-50 on this. Keep.
Okay. Hybrid working environment.
Definitely keep.
Quizzes and workplace socials.
Definitely keep.
Nice. Working with masks on in sectors where it's not necessary to be in the office.
No idea. Bin, for the sake of
it. Virtual yoga classes to improve posture.
Oh, I think if it was virtual, keep it, but it would be better if it was in person as well.
And wellness programs in lieu of just paying people more.
100%. Keep it.
Keep the wellness programs.
Keep it. I think companies could be doing way more to influence people's mental and physical health.
To people that would say, well, I'd rather just be paid more for what I do rather than companies actively going out of their way to put on a wellness program, what would be the retort in that sense?
Oh, look, I mean, everyone just wants more money, don't they? I mean, so do I. Like, it's, but I think it comes down to, oh God, this is so complicated. Look, I just think, oh mate, you've put me on the spot here. You really nailed me here.
It's all right. No, it's okay. I mean, the thing is, I think what people prioritize is that money aspect, and I think people feel constantly undervalued, and I think it partially due to the fact that the economic circumstances that we find ourselves in, but also this slightly down to especially large companies and companies in general will always offer to pay you less. I can't imagine, or I haven't heard of many companies that will overpay someone. And so when I think in this scenario where, it's like a wellness program has been put in place because we want to look after your well-being and, we're putting on this program and they're framing it as and people are going, no, I just want more money. I want more money so I can go and afford a holiday. That will really look after my well-being because I want to lay in the sun. I think there's always that little bit of trade-off. But if a company is going out with genuine intentions with that wellness program, then for me, that's going to be beneficial. Even if people don't see it in the short term, I think if you buy into that and you buy into the culture, the long-term benefits you'll see are better than just having money.
Yeah, 100%. I think also you bring up a good point. Too often, especially in Western culture, we define our success on how much you bring in. And they can tell you, we all know this, there are a hell of a lot of rich people who are not happy with their lives. I think a wellness program, if it is effective, it should be allowing people to find actually what really makes them happy and content. And I think the biggest thing that I've found recently is having inner peace, because you can be happy, but your inner peace can be disturbed. And I think if your inner peace is disturbed, that is very hard to find again. That takes time. So redefining how we view success, that has to be the first thing, in my opinion.
I'd agree. I think I had this I had this conversation actually. My brother likes to, every time he comes home, likes to have a conscientious or controversial debate. And we were debating communism against capitalism at the dinner table.
Oh yeah.
And this is after I come home from training, so I was already knackered. I knew coming home from training, I was like, I bet you anything they've got a bottle of red open and they're talking about something deep. And lo and behold, there was a bottle and a half already sunk, and they were talking about that topic. I was like, oh, here we go. But I sat and listened to them, and they were talking about so many different theories and this person's whatever, and everything based on how we've measured society and success today. And I said, and then they basically stopped talking and they looked at me to see if I had anything to say. And I said, right, well, just by the way, you're both wrong, because we measure success and the metric of success in a completely wrong way. The way that we need to measure success is not on money, wealth, the amount of money that you bring through the door, or the amount of things that you have, but in fact, happiness. And until we start measuring success by happiness and genuine utility, then any system that you're going to put in place is going to be fundamentally flawed, because we're all going out for things that actually don't make us happy as human beings. And when we all know that, that I think for me, it's things like experiences and relationships and connections that I value most in the world. And that's something that money can't buy. Now, money makes things easier, but they can't buy the amount of time that I put into people and the amount of conversations I have, and the like conversations where I check in on people and just how they do. No money can buy that. It's all about the of effort and time you put in. And so I think, going off tangent a little bit, but I think we do measure, and the metric of success is fundamentally flawed. And I think then to move forward as a society, I would like to see not necessarily a fundamental switch, because I know we can't live in hippy dippy doodah like everyone going around like peace and love, man, right? But there does need to be a bigger appreciation that happiness needs to play a bigger part in our lives and how we measure success.
Mate, I agree. I think, on a personal level, the move abroad is, for me, with one eye on the future. Business wise, it's shouldn't have an impact really. Everything's remote, so the infrastructure's already there. But for me personally, it is a very different way of life. I have one eye on how I want to behave going forward as a man. And that's not a journey that I can do really in this country. And if, speaking openly and honestly, I do want to be a father. I do want to get married. I do want to have kids. And this for me is a step forward in developing those skills of being really, really 100% responsible for my actions and my words. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a heavy learning curve, but again, it's not something that I'm already not going through. So, having the ability to develop that skill at a younger age than, maybe other people are not fortunate to have. I'm looking forward to it.
Sound like a man with a plan, brother. In terms of the opportunities and challenges you foresee from working in Colombia and a different country, what do you think?
Well, look, I mean, time zone it's convenient being in the UK, in the EU. Obviously, you can work in the Australian time zone and the US time zone very easily. So time zone is going to be a bit of a challenge, but again, there is so much opportunity up in the States. I'm not far. And again, like Colombia, it's not the biggest market, but looking forward to it, I think there are definitely stones that can be turned, and we can potentially do something cool there. But again, I'm happy with the way that we're currently operating. Fingers crossed it continues to go that way, and just going to continue to work hard, develop a network, develop myself, and see where life goes, really.
Beautiful. Where do you see the future of EXO? What's your kind of? I know it's difficult because things will be ever evolving for you, but I know you set yourself a kind of master or a target for next year around tennis. But in terms of like 5-10 years, what do you think the kind of capabilities are really?
It's an interesting question, because there's part of me that goes, oh, I want this, 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 and this. And there's a part of me that just goes, who gives a fuck if it's operating in 10 years' time? Honestly. If it dies tomorrow, I'll be sad, but I've learned a hell of a lot. If it dies in 5 years' time, great. I've still learned a lot and got an amazing experience. I don't necessarily put a timeline on it, where I want it to be, where I want it to go, because it is a process. It is a new thing every single day. And the markets can change in an instant. It's all about having that ability to adapt, see what's in front of you, and play those cards. So just trying to, obviously there's things that I want to achieve, and like the 1 year ambition to complete these projects. But other than that, I'm not really. I'm keeping it quite broad and quite open. Bruce Lee, be like water, because if anything, this has been conceived from the biggest global shutdown of since God knows when, and it could happen again. It could happen again tomorrow. It could happen in 5 years, 10 years, whatever. So I'm just looking for learning experiences and good people, good times.
I love that. And I think that will help. I think it will help you to be personally so much more present by focusing on what's happening now. I don't know if you've listened to, this is a podcast I've talked about before, but the High Performance podcast with Johnny Wilkinson, and being absolutely present in every single thing that you're doing and engaged to the, I think that will drive the best performance, and not necessarily being so obsessed with consequences. And it doesn't sound like you are, which, it's really great to hear. And it's actually quite refreshing, because I think people, and in business in particular, can become so fixated on what's your 5-10 year plan, even what's your 5-10 personal year plan. It's like, you know what, I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball. Like, we've just been through a global pandemic. Like you say, things can be thrown into turmoil so very easily. So actually the biggest skill that we need to develop is adaptability, and being able to switch on a dime, and also how we react, and how our brains react to certain adversity or new opportunity, or things that go our way very fortuitously. So I think, mate, it's really cool to hear you speak like that, because I think it's a really nice school of thought, and hopefully, I mean, one thing I did want to say, and I'll come on to it at the end, but anyone, and I know my brother is potentially looking at business, and he's a young guy, and he's looking like, how do I potentially start up a business, and what kind of things and attributes do I need to have? I think it's a really cool learning to have. In terms of your biggest, and I know you do a lot of reading, I know you're very engaged in learning from other people, and gaining as much insight and information. It's incredibly important. Who would you say you look up to the most, or the kind of some of the biggest learners, especially over the last 12 months, that you've had? Loaded question, I know, because you sent me a lot of book recommendations. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, look, I sent you that's all I've done. So there's still so much more, and you've given me some great recommendations. Like I'm gonna read the Goggins book when I land in Colombia. That's gonna be my first. Like, let's go.
Yeah, change your life, I promise you.
Yeah, I think there's two ways you can really answer that question, which is also, I've just forgotten it. The question was, sorry, dyslexic mind right here. Just
so in terms of your biggest learnings.
Biggest learnings. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's two answers to this. One is the biggest business learnings, and the biggest personal emotional learning. Business. Look, I've been very fortunate to have a business partner who is extremely patient with me. He's a bit older. He's got more experience than I have, and yeah, his strengths complement my weaknesses. So what the biggest thing is, I feel extremely secure in that relationship and friendship, which I know a lot of people don't have the opportunity to have. But biggest business learning, I think it is just that adaptability, not really knowing what's going to happen. You know, I had a Zoom conversation with a dear friend of mine, and because she was trying to be like, look, like, what are you actually doing? You know, you're just kind of not really doing that much. Let's see if we can get some ideas into you. And then I was feeling a bit down about it. And this was in like January, because I was being impatient. And then all of a sudden, from February, March onwards, it's just been go, 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 and it hasn't really stopped. So I think the biggest business learning is being present, adaptable, and patient. Really. Yeah, go on.
Awesome. No. It's awesome. I think it's so important, especially as we live in a world that's incredibly fluctuating, changing circumstance all the time. We have new businesses and new industries entering the whole time. I think across business, if we can all learn to be a bit more adaptable, then I think I think that would all put us in really good stead. Because the worst thing, I think, if you don't develop that, then you run the risk of stagnating, of lagging in terms of your growth, and potentially letting opportunities pass you by. So I think saying yes more often than you say no, and just be ready for what the world's going to throw at you, I think is huge.
Yeah, 100%. Because the world is. I saw a great comment the other day about the law of attraction, and it is very easy to kind of get into this cycle of why me, why me, why me. But with the laws of attraction, if you want something and you're actively putting out a wish and a want, you are releasing vibrations into the universe. And the interesting thing about that is, what the universe does to challenge you is send you obstacles and send you tasks and things that you have to get over to prove your worth, that you can actually handle what you want. And that is a very hard concept to deal with, because sometimes those obstacles are horrible. But you have to be persistent, you have to be strong, you have to be stubborn and go, I am worth it. I do possess this skill, and what I want will come my way. So yeah, mate, it's a steep learning curve.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think, I love the fact, I think I like our relationship because every time I speak to you, I learn something new. But it'd be really great to, see how, the business develops and you develop going forward. I think it's a really exciting story. I think it's an exciting time for you as well. And you're operating in an industry that is still very immature. And so, I think the possibilities are quite literally endless, especially with, there'll be the new platforms, new ways of reaching out to people, new ways of, all the time coming about. And that for me is super exciting. So, mate, it's going to be wicked to kind of track your progress, especially as a business guru. And mate, like,
oh no, guru, no. No buzzwords here, please. No guru.
To be fair, I've done badly there. Should have avoided that one. But yeah, I mean, just to wrap up, actually, before we wrap up, I've made a fatal error in that I forgot to ask you when we first came on, and should have been my first question to you, was, as this is Thacker Sunday Hangover, and in England on a hangover, one of the most popular hangover cures
Oh.
is an English breakfast. What I want to know is, out of all the items on an English breakfast, which one are you keeping if you can only keep one? I've had toast. I've had toast and black pudding so far. Black pudding, I was like, I don't think I'll be inviting him back. I'll be honest with you. But
what would I keep? You better not make this into a soundbite. But you can't beat a good sausage.
Yeah, I love it. Listen,
honestly, a good quality. Yeah, honestly, you can't beat a good sausage. You genuinely can't. I'm glad this is at the end of the podcast Oli. As well now.
Yeah. God. But no, right. Okay, so we've had one toast, one black pudding, one sausage. I'm inclined. Do you know what? You actually can't beat a good sausage. I definitely rate sausage more than bacon. If you get a banging like Cumberland, not that I eat them anymore, but when I did, when they've got the herbs right, nothing better. I'm with you on that one, brother. So going forward, your core values as a person, if you could just say 3 core values that you want to stick to from a business perspective and from a personal perspective going forward, what would they be?
Honesty, straight away. Can't deal with dishonesty. Core values. I think also the ability to want to learn. I think that's so key, especially nowadays when information is so readily available and people just kind of either get stuck in their ways or just are just stubborn to not want to learn. And lastly, tough one. Perseverance. I think, as we said with the laws of attraction, people do tend to give up too easily. I also think that's partly because they don't have an idea of what they want their reality to be in the long term. It's horrible to live in the future, but if you have an idea of what you want your reality to be and how you want to behave, getting through those obstacles does make it far easier.
Awesome. And last question then, and a nice one to bring together what I think has been, I've really enjoyed this podcast, mate. So again, thank you very much for coming. Genuinely,
thanks for having me.
It's been insightful, and really have enjoyed it. And hopefully you'll be back. But obviously, I know you're going to be a busy boy. We'll
Zoom when I'm on the beach with a caipirinha or a pina colada or something like that, mate.
Oh, don't make me jealous, honestly. Unbelievable. But last question, Mr. Warren.
Yes.
How would you like to be remembered?
How would I like to be remembered? Someone that was caring and really would have helped at anything. Honest and open as well.
Love it. Brother, thank you so much again for your time. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed the Thacker Sunday Hangover this week. Oli, for anyone that would like to track, things that you got going on, your socials, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, not on any dating apps. So sorry, ladies. Even though I am single, I'm not on any dating apps, so you can't find me there. Yeah, my handles are all the same. It's Oli Warren Garcia. So yeah, if you do fancy giving me a follow and seeing what I get up to, I will be actually, Thacker, I will be starting a new TikTok all about life in South America, which will be a lot of fun, hopefully. But yeah, let's see. Exciting times ahead, and let's hope everyone can have a good summer somewhere in Europe. Fingers crossed. Get vaccinated.
Yeah, here's hoping. So I will link everything down below. Again, if you're interested in Ollie's podcast as well, the Hope That Kills You podcast for sports lovers, for hopeless sports fans and romantics alike.
Yeah, we've also got another one. We've also got another one called Behind the Play, which is a bit more serious, and that's kind of diving into certain personalities. We've had tennis players, snooker players, and lots of different coaches on there. So again, that's a bit more motivational and less shit lad banter chat kind of thing. So yeah.
So go check that out now. This podcast is finished. Get over there. Right. Everyone have a fantastic week. Love you all, and we'll see you again soon.